Wow, like I said, these are some crazy times we live in. Look, I say myself, stay prayed up. God got the last word. I believe in the Most High.
For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life.
In 24 hours, Putin and China will change everything. Yes, tomorrow, a BRICS lightning bolt will shock the Western hegemony that's been ruling the world for decades. The Western media is totally ignoring the story, by the way, because they don't want to admit what's about to happen. Goldman Sachs, though, understands it, and they believe that by the year 2050, the BRICS nations will dominate the global economy. So on Tuesday, yes, tomorrow, the BRICS summit officially kicks off in South Africa. This is the first face-to-face BRICS summit since the start of COVID, and we are about to witness a rebalancing of the world order. The agenda items at this summit are massive. The currency, yes, a new currency, trade, military cooperation, AI, microchips, oil, all of it, infrastructure, rail lines, shipping. This is a big, big deal. And the United States, I guess, didn't get an invitation. The British didn't get an invitation. Germany isn't welcome. Is the game over for the Western hegemony? Well, the writing is on the wall. Now, for those of you that don't know, BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And it started out small over a decade ago, and now it's become the greatest threat to Western power that we've ever seen. And I'm not talking about military power here, which we'll get to in a second. I'm actually talking about economic power, oil power, computer power, trade power, the greatest weapons of all, not those bombs. Now, the top of the agenda is the United States dollar, squarely in the crosshairs. Here's how Foreign Policy magazine headlines this moment. A BRICS currency could shake the dollar's dominance. The de-dollarization moment might finally be here. Really? Is it true? After all, talk of getting rid of the US dollar as a reserve currency goes back to the 1960s. Here's the New York Times. In 1968, talking about France trying to separate itself from the US dollar. Yes, French President Charles de Gaulle versus Lyndon Johnson. That's how old this is. That's how far back this goes. This isn't new at all. But now we are at a tipping point. Brazil's president, Lula da Silva, says that every night he asks himself why all of these countries have to base their trade on the US dollar. Can you imagine every night before going to bed that's the thought that you have? Now, he does. Well, now they don't. A gold-backed currency that stands as the backbone of a new BRICS currency is being rolled out in earnest. Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa, trading oil, computer chips, minerals, and settling those transactions in a reserve currency that has nothing to do with the US dollar. All of the previous meetings of these BRICS nations have been leading up to this moment in South Africa.
BRICS countries are home to more than 3.2 billion people, around 40% of the global population. None of the bloc's members is in the G7, the group of 7 advanced economies. To increase its influence, BRICS is considering bringing new members into the fold.
Just look at the trade between the BRICS nations. There's a massive financial surplus. The BRICS nations have a trade surplus. Brazil just hit a record trade surplus. So why would they want to settle these transactions with US dollars? Doesn't make any sense. Meanwhile, Europe's trade deficit has hit a new record. Nearly $500 billion trade deficit. Which side would you rather be on? Of course, this isn't happening overnight, and there are big impediments to a BRICS currency. The biggest issue right now is that if Russia wants to import things from other countries that are not named China, they'll likely have to settle it in US dollars if they want to import those items. But what if more countries want to join BRICS and ditch the US dollar? Then there's safety in numbers. And the number of people you're doing imports from are part of your BRICS conglomerate. In fact, other countries are noticing and beginning to join. At this summit, Russia and China are expected to approve the new applications of a bunch of new countries into BRICS. Algeria, Bahrain, Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, just to name a few. They've all submitted requests for membership to be a part of BRICS. And the Turkish government has expressed an interest in joining the group. Those are just a few of the names. But wrap your heads around this one. More than 40 other countries are now vying to join BRICS. 40.
Samita, what are you hearing about just how much bigger BRICS could get?
Well, we've heard from leadership here at the BRICS, this Foreign Ministers BRICS Summit, that at least 19 countries have expressed either formally or informally interest in either joining the BRICS grouping or even having involvement with the BRICS Development Bank, which really is aimed at investing in the global south, in developing nations to boost their economies. And this is one of the reasons that BRICS is becoming increasingly attractive to developing nations.
BRICS now accounts for 31% of global GDP. And just a few months ago, they overtook the United States and the G7 nations for GDP dominance. Goldman Sachs, once again, won't have to wait until 2050. It's already happening. Beyond a gold-backed currency and moving away from the US dollar, one of the biggest stories of this summit in South Africa is AI. Generative AI. It's one of their top agenda items. They're holding many meetings on AI this week in South Africa. BRICS wants to dominate AI. And who do you think will be the leader of the AI revolution?